Yeah, my name is Rick Latin, and I am a retired professor of plant pathology, turf pathology from Purdue University. The drawbacks of DMIs, it's no secret that they have one disadvantage, I think, in that there are PGR effects, some discoloration, and some phytotoxicity during the very most stressful periods of the growing season. And so in the past, we've tried to avoid using the DMIs during those periods. And unfortunately, that's sometimes when we need them the most, because there's so many diseases there that threaten the turf. We'd like to use them, but maybe we avoid using them because of their effects on turf quality. So I've been introduced to this Maxtima probably 2014 or so. And it was just a number. And I was curious as to what it was. You kept it a very good secret there. And I asked my colleagues if they knew exactly what it was. We were curious because it was very effective and against several different diseases. And we wanted to know what it was. And it was, we learned later that it was in fact a DMI. And I think we're all pleased to see a new DMI come on stream that we could use in a variety of ways and address so many different diseases. Yeah, I think one of the unique things about the Maxtima DMI is that it has a safety factor built in, that the phytotoxicity, the PGR effect, the discoloration doesn't occur with the Maxtima. And in our research, we used it for several years at many different rates. And that effect just doesn't occur. And so we're very confident that superintendents can use it to that advantage. Yeah, we've used Maxtima against dollar spot on creeping bentgrass fairways, bent POA fairways, creeping bentgrass greens for 3 or 4 or 5 years, as long as we've had that. Always been impressed with its efficacy. And aside from a broad spectrum of activity, the efficacy is something that impressed us. Not all DMIs are alike, even though they all attack the same metabolic function in the pathogen cell. They differ with respect to the type of molecule it is and how tightly it binds to the target site. I'm under the impression that one of the advantages here is that we have very tight binding, which means that a more effective reduction in the pathogen population. And when you can reduce the pathogen population a great deal, it translates into longer periods of control. Yeah, I definitely think we should put it into the program, fairway program. For dollar spot, which seems to be an increasing threat, over the past 10 years, it's been as serious as anything, in the north. And I think a DMI belongs in that rotation. And I think Maxtima is a good fit because of its efficacy. Like I said, if you can get a few more days out of it, you get a more thorough reduction in the pathogen population. You would superintendent has the advantage, or superintendent would realize a little bit more security in the application. We had an interesting experiment last year up at Purdue where we were looking at a variety of DMI fungicides, and we applied the fungicides to plots curatively. Disease has already been developed in the plots, and then we monitored the amount of disease and turf recovery over time after the application. We noticed that with all of the products except the Maxtima, we had just a limited amount of reduction in the pathogen symptoms, a limited amount of reduction in symptoms from 5 to 7 days, and thereafter they started to increase beyond that. And we realized that at that time, we were dealing at a site that had resistance, was fairly insensitive to the DMI fungicides. Now, with the Maxtima in that same trial, we found that we had good control, so limited symptoms, or a reduction in symptoms, 5 to 7 days, and that continued through 14 days. So we're wondering, and I think my colleagues will check this out going forward, we're wondering if the efficacy or the nature of this Maxtima DMI is different than some of the others in that it can be used where the pathogen population is trending towards insensitivity. Yeah, anthracnose is, again, a very serious problem on polo greens in the northern quadrant of the country. And we're always looking for something to add to our arsenal against anthracnose. Now, anthracnose pathogen is a stress pathogen, we call it. Under stressful conditions, it's more likely to infect and develop. And that's where you get the thin turf and the decline in the turf. That stress could be nutritional, could be environmental. Could be the natural senescent decline of POA over time as the summer comes on. And we've avoided using DMI fungicides during those very stressful times because DMI, if it has a PGR effect, it's adding a little bit more stress to it. So any good that it might be doing in terms of disease control might be compensated by the fact that it is adding an additional stress onto the plants. So we're always looking for something to replace that. Well, now with the Maxtima, I think will compete very well because it doesn't have that PGR effect. And we can use it at any time we like, even during the most stressful period for the stress pathogen or that disease anthracnose. So the SDHIs were a welcome addition to the arsenal for sure. And in many cases, because of maybe reduction in efficacy or the stress applied by DMIs during the heat of the summer, maybe the SDHIs were used to replace the DMI fungicides. Now with the, we don't want to overuse, we don't want to overuse the SDHIs, perhaps like we did in the 1990s with the traditional DMI fungicides. So now here's a chance with this new chemistry to reintroduce DMI back into our program, even during the most stressful periods, and actually take some pressure off of our SDHIs. Another advantage of DMI is that it covers more than one base. It covers many bases. And I think superintendents could use that to their advantage. Navicon, of course, combining the new DMI and then the same QOI fungicide as in Insignia, offers a combination which even further broadens the spectrum of the fungicide. They are both excellent active ingredients, so we would expect even more efficacy or even greater performance of the fungicide in terms of disease control. We can use it during the heat of the summer. It's an anthracnose, it's a dollar spot, it's a brown patch, it's a summer patch fungicide. Of course, we're not going to use it repeatedly, in consecutive applications all the time, but we know that we can insert this Navicon in there to control so many diseases. And I think it's a great combination. It offers superintendents one more option for excellent disease control. Yeah, first of all, introducing the DMIs into a program does take some planning and to look at what the disease threats are over the entire season. Since the DMIs cover a lot of bases, it can be inserted almost anywhere. I prefer never to wait until a problem is evident or symptoms have already occurred or there's a serious outbreak before you make that decision. I would like the superintendent to look at the program and maybe early on, before a dollar spot even gets started, before you see the first symptom. The superintendents know their property and they know when it's best to apply. So I would think that one of the things I would do is in the springtime include the Maxtima or the Navicon, that sort of DMI, into the program. I would also wouldn't hesitate to use it during the heat of the summer, during the most stressful periods. On greens, anytime. Of course, we don't want to use them consecutively. We want to be careful about conserving these active ingredients. But I think the advantage here is that we can use them at any time. So I would consider inserting it right into the middle of the summer, the heat of the summer. And then if you need a little extra help with cleanup in the fall, we can include it then as well. But I like to get off to a good start. And so my opinion is in the springtime, when, let's say on fairways, when that dollar spot threatens, not when outbreak occurs, but when it threatens, and superintendents know that, that's the time to make the application. So deciding on the spray intervals for fairways is difficult, and it's superintendents know their own fairways and what kind of pressure they have. If it's a fairway that has chronic disease pressure with dollar spot, I still think a 3-week, 21-day program would be sufficient. And again, that's starting before that outbreak occurs. Okay, and keeping populations low will help superintendents maintain that 21-day interval, even under conditions on a fairway that has a lot of disease pressure on it. If we're considering fairways that don't have that much pressure, there's no reason why we couldn't go to 28 days or even further. I mean, that's under the discretion of the superintendent. But I think even under high disease pressure conditions, 21 days is more than reasonable.
BASF. We create chemistry.